Hey, how's it going, captains? Admiral TORA here, and welcome aboard for another World of Warships video on my channel. In today's video, I'm sailing the Tier 9 Japanese aircraft carrier, the Taiho. So you might have noticed that this game is really weird, and the reason I say that is because matchmaking has placed us in a game where 90% of the team's composition are battleships, only one cruiser, one destroyer, and of course, one aircraft carrier. Now, I believe the culprit behind this weird matchmaking is the Hunt for the Bismarck campaign, since it's already 1 week into the campaign. I'm guessing that people have already earned the Bismarck that they wanted from the campaign, so there's probably a lot of Bismarck in the queue right now. And I just happen to be placed in a match where there is a lot of battleships. So the Taiho, let's talk about the Taiho. I am pretty much absolutely garbage with the Taiho. I have a appalling 27% win rate with the Taiho. And I don't know why, but I just don't know how to get the Taiho to work. I was fine with the Shokaku, the Hiryu, the Ryujo, and even the American Essex, but I can't get my Taiho to work. I mean, the Essex also has a very low win rate. I think it's like 44%, so it's below the 50% win rate. But nonetheless, I am playing the Taiho in this game, and I thought this game would be interesting because of the amount of battleships. So I'm facing a Essex, a Strike Essex as a matter of fact. And since this Taiho captain does not have air supremacy, I only have 4 fighters per squadron. I totally forgot about it, so I right away engaged the Essex, and this squadron 2 is going to get ripped to shreds in a few moments. Like literally, look at that. Not even a single plane was shot down. Not even close. So I tried to do a strafe, and yeah, that didn't go so well. Even under friendly anti-air with the Z-52, that I decided to help to take the B flag since she is the only destroyer on our team. It's going to be very crucial to get that early game advantage by taking B. Spot the enemy torpedo bombers and dive bombers. I believe the Essex is trying to take out our one and only destroyers right away since they are the fastest ships in this game. The enemy Shimakaze, which is their destroyers, decided to go A. I spot the enemy team in terms of the majority of the fleet going towards A. It's just out of map knowledge that I guess they're going to A, since battleships have the tendency to go A over C, since C has a lot of islands that are in the way, so A is a very common place to go, and my prediction was correct. Both of my fighters got ripped to shreds, so yeah, I pretty much screwed over the Z-52. Luckily, Z-52 has smoke, and he is going to sit in the smoke for quite some time. I spotted the enemy Yamato and the Kurfürst. I had a decision between the Kurfürst and Yamato. I decided to strike the Yamato in this case. Now, when you play the Taiho, you want to surprise attack your enemies, and the reason I say that is because Japanese carriers is all about setting things up, since torpedo bombers aren't as easy as dive bombers, I would put it that way. But torpedo bombers do reward you higher than dive bombers, since dive bombers are RNG based. So I went for the strike on the Yamato. I've been playing Japanese carriers for a long time, so I do know how to use my torpedoes pretty good. I scored 12 torpedo hits on the Yamato, which is very big. Not enough to sink the Yamato, of course. I think one of the Yamato class battleships, the Musashi, received like 19 torpedoes when the Americans were hunting down those 2 battleships and sinking them, what is left of the Japanese Navy. Going for my dive bomb strike. Yeah, these guys are going to get ripped to shreds by 4 float planes. It only takes 1 float plane to screw over a Japanese dive bomb attack. Now I spot the Shimakaze on the way back with my torpedo bombers. Send both of my fighters to the Z-52 again because I know for a fact that the strike Essex wants that Z-52. Now I do see the Izumo and Montana that is a little bit late to the party towards A. Enemy team has stacked A, and stacking A was a big mistake for the enemy team. Very common mistake for any high tier gameplay, because everyone wants to be huddled together like a pack of wolves, which is nothing wrong as long as you are productive. Stacking A and staying at A for half the game is a death trap, okay? In this case, the enemy team does stack A, and it is a battleship dominant game, so it's not a big surprise. I send Squadron 2 to scout for the Shimakaze. I know for a fact that the Shimakaze is going to be a big problem against our friendly battleship that is going towards A. I mean, destroyers and battleships don't go well together. Still searching for the Essex planes. He is following my fighter. Now, you might have noticed that when it comes to playing carriers, especially when you play carriers, enemy carriers have the tendencies to follow your fighters. So I sometimes use my fighters as a way to divert the attention of the enemy carrier, because they think that where the fighters go is where my strike planes goes. This next strike is going to take some time to set up, because since the enemy Essex fighters are on A, and they do have a lot of battleships. Battleships have the best anti-air without the defensive fire, of course. That's the difference between cruisers and battleships, is that cruisers have better anti-air because of defensive fire, but without this defensive fire, it's pretty clear that normally battleships would have better anti-air. There's the Minotaur. I'm searching for the Minotaur and Shimakaze mainly because those are the two ships that can kill my destroyer. At the same time, they can do a lot of damage against our friendly battleships. Battleship, on the other hand, on the enemy team, although they are the dominant force, is not a concern because I can sink them, especially with the Taiho. So I do spot the Izumo over here, and I'm going to set for another attack. Now, like I said, setting up is very crucial. Keep in mind, the magic number when it comes to playing Japanese carriers is 6 kilometers. And the reason why I say that is because that is the concealment on your torpedo bombers and your dive bombers. American carriers, I think, is 7 to 8 kilometers because their squadrons are larger. So when the moment the enemy, spots the torpedo bombers, is already 6 kilometers, and that's really no chance, which is the surprise attack with the Japanese playstyle. So the moment they spot it, really, these big ships, they're gonna have a hard time turning away from these torpedo bombers. I was going to strike the Montana, but since the Montana didn't go into the B flag, I just went in and rushed into the Izumo. So this was like somewhat a minor mistake, but not really because I'm spending too much time setting up. So I just decided that why not? We have a Taiho. Taiho has a huge reserve of torpedo bombers. Let's go shoot for the Izumo since the Izumo continues to sail in a broadside. Scored 3 hits, enough for a flooding. I'm going to follow up with these 2 dive bombers. That is the sequence with Japanese attacks. And it's not always the sequence, but Japanese attacks are much more limited compared to the American attacks. American attacks, I talked about this in my Lexington guide video. You can do difference of, waves. Sometimes you have to all in, sometimes you can't all in. And for the Japanese, if you want to effectively sink a ship, you go in with your torpedo bombers, do the massive amount of damage, follow up with the dive bombers. Now, some would say that you do more damage, theoretically, if you go in with your dive bombers, score like 2 to 3 fires, and force the damage control, and then you follow in with your torpedo bombers, and that is where flooding happens, because flooding does more damage. That is true. But the problem is that when you follow in with your dive bombers as a first wave, you alert the enemy carrier that you're attacking a ship. By the time you follow up with your torpedo bombers, and especially torpedo bombers, because torpedo bombers are easier to shoot down compared to dive bombers, the enemy fighter can just screw you over with your torpedo bomber attack, and that kind of defeats the purpose of doing well. So to get the best consistent result, you normally shoot for the torpedo bombers first, because they have the alpha damage to guarantee that, you're guaranteed to do damage if you do it right, of course. But if you do it with your dive bomber first and then follow with your torpedo bombers, they're going to do more damage to sink a ship right away, but sometimes the flooding does not happen, and also alerts the enemy carrier that you're going for another attack. So I sent my Squadron 3 down to the south side because of the Shimakaze, and I spot 2 of the Essex dive bombers. Enemy team is starting to mobilize towards B. I setting up for another attack. Now, when you play tier 9, tier 10 carriers, people have different ways to approach it. I could have just right away attacked that Izumo with my 2 torpedo bombers or any of these battleships that are nearby. But since these battleships are tier 10 and tier 9, I decided that it's best to play it safe and wait with patience and group up my 3 torpedo bomber squadrons. I just like to do that. It's a lot of times setting up when you play higher tier carriers because you want to be precise with your attack. You want to make the attack work. That is the concept behind playing carriers. And here you're about to see that screw up big time. I have Fighter Squadron 2 protecting the Montana. Now I should have properly strafed this, but for some odd reason I didn't time it right. I don't know why. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Maybe I was a little bit too on the edge with it, but this time will work. See, look at this. It looks exactly the same as the first failure, but this one actually works. The timing looks exactly the same. So I don't know why it failed, but hey, it is what it is. And besides, the Montana is, yeah, she is out of position. But I'll make it up for her by protecting her against the torpedo bombers, which probably matters the most. So I got my 3 squadrons of torpedo bombers together. Going to have my dive bomber trail behind my torpedo bombers to do the follow-up. I'm deciding to pick between the Bismarck, Montana, and Curve first. I wanted to go for the Curve first because the Curve first is the easiest target since she is the largest battleship in the game. Going for the next torpedo run here. Coming in hot. And here we go. Lead enough ahead. Now, if you want to learn how to get good with these torpedo bombers, one way you can do it is by, while your torpedoes bomber are going towards a ship, you know, remember the 6 kilometer stealth, right? When you're like beyond 6 kilometers, your torpedo bombers are not spotted by anything, okay? So if there's a plane in the sky, it will spot it, even though you won't see it. But as like you approach, I tend to have my cursor over the ship that I'm going to attack, and you know when you do the automatic attack, it does the prediction already. I usually do that so I can get a good idea of how far, or at least how fast, the ship is going, so I know how far to drop my torpedoes. The farther you drop your torpedoes, the higher risk of missing, but at the same time, if the ship neglects the torpedo, they're going to get hit really hard by Japanese convergence, the converging pattern. So I use my dive bombers for this Bismarck. I honestly don't have a clue where that North Carolina came from, because that North Carolina is way by herself. She probably came from C. She took C by herself, I'm guessing. Yeah, that would make sense because we sent our destroyer to B, and our Moskva, I think our Moskva was somewhere, is the Moskva dead? I don't see the Moskva. Oh, the Moskva is coming from C. So I was supposed to send my aircraft carrier, my Taiho, in between the 2 islands. You see that Montana? Yeah, that little small island right above B, the big island with B and the small island above it. I was supposed to send it right there because I wanted to get my aircraft carrier as close as possible. And North Carolina just straight up lose against the Bismarck. I mean, she was bound to lose since Bismarck is far better than North Carolina when it comes to close range engagement. At the same time, they had the Essex nearby. I totally neglected my Squadron 3, so my Squadron 3 got destroyed by the enemy fighters. Now remember when I was talking about how the enemy tends to follow your movement when you send your fighters to different location. So I sent my fighters to the Moskva to divert his attention because that's the way carriers players think. They just have the tendency. I was hoping that I can send my fighters to protect my battleships over there, but it's too late. So in the meantime, I was sending my fighters to distract the enemy fighter. I snuck my torpedo bomber near the edge of the map, and I was going to strike this Bismarck. Now, I think I overestimated my distance, so it was too far away. And as a result, I didn't realize that Bismarck turns toward B. And it will only make sense for the Bismarck to turn B, honestly. I was hoping for him to actually continue down the perimeter of the B flag, but it looks like she is determined to go B. So my next target is the Bismarck. My Squadron 3 was able to resurface and hit toward B with the Moskva. I spot the enemy Essex. I believe the enemy Essex is getting desperate because she's trying to shorten the length of the game by sacrificing herself. Well, putting herself in a position where it's risky. And the reason why is because look at the scoreboard. They are behind 300 points, and none of the battleships, since these are battleships, these are big ships, they're very slow, are making an effort to stop the bleed. So the Essex decides to make the heroic approach by canceling, or at least stopping the bleed on the points by contesting the B flag. Took out the Bismarck, and at this point is really game. Now, I think I should at least start pushing B because it's already late game. It would only make sense since carriers starts to lose their potential as the game progresses, so it will only make sense. Aside from that, I think this is game, so hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time on World of Warships.